Hi, my name is Robert Scott. I'm an archaeologist. I live in Worthing, West Sussex. I originally come from Middlesex in London. And my interest in archaeology really started when I was about 8 years of age. I was playing in the garden with my toys, my cars, in the dirt when my father was doing some gardening. And I was digging around, creating a landscape for my cars, when I found this glass bottle. I asked my father what this bottle was, and he said, oh, it's probably Victorian. He said, if you dig a little bit deeper, you might find something Roman. So I thought, Roman? What's Roman? I'd never heard the term Roman before. So I started digging down. I found little bits of red pottery, and he said, oh, it could be Roman. Anyway, I was digging in this hole for about 3 weeks until my mother got really sick of it. I suppose I was sort of digging, hoping that I'd find a real Roman at the bottom of this pit, but it was no more, and I had to fill it in and put in some flowers. Anyway, another reason why I probably got involved in archaeology was my father was a building surveyor. He worked in the City of London, and a day out with Dad wasn't going to football matches or cricket matches like other kids. It was walking around London looking at architecture, and he explained Greek and Roman architecture to me, and how Egyptian architecture was included on the empire buildings and things, and we went to various museums. I always had a really good interest in ancient Egypt, even from that age. I had a very Christian upbringing. It was a church school, primary school, going to Sunday school and all that sort of thing, and prayed a lot, but didn't really get much back in the way of any answers. It was all very, very silent. And at the age of 17, I asked the big question, what am I doing here? And where am I going? And that really sort of made me research Christianity and Islam and Judaism. And the pathway always tended to end up in ancient Egypt, because really ancient Egypt was the first national state in the world. And from that national state came the ideas of an afterlife and a value system, of course. So when I was 24, I went to Egypt. It was my first trip. I decided to fly into Luxor and backpack my way around Egypt. I went to Asyut and then up to Cairo, taking local transport, meeting local people. Saw all the pyramid sites around Cairo, museums, tombs, and then down into the Fayoum to have a look at the 12th dynasty pyramids down there. It was a great time. On one occasion, I was invited by a local Egyptian back for a cup of tea, and I didn't realise that this young guy, who was about the same age as me, wanted to marry a daughter of this local craftsman. And this local craftsman used to carve these beautiful pictures and Egyptian designs on pieces of limestone, sandstone. It ended up being more than a cup of tea. It ended up being a feast in my honour, and I was quite green. And eventually these tablets came out, and before I knew it, he wanted me. My host wanted me to buy one of these tablets for £40 English. Well, in my days of London, I used to work down a fruit and veg market from the age of 14. So I had a very cosmopolitan and sort of barrow boy mentality about, be careful who you're dealing with. And I could see that these guys were trying to take me for a ride. And I thought, well, how am I going to get out of this house? We're in a house in a village on the edge of the desert. There's no taxis, there's no buses. It's 42 degrees in the shade. It's in the middle of July. How am I going to get out of this situation? So in the end, I agreed that I'd buy this tablet off of him for £40 English, but my money was back at my hotel. And the young Egyptian guy who wanted to marry my host's daughter, agreed that he would escort me back to the hotel so I could pick up this money with the tablet, give him the money, he'd give me the tablet, and the deal would be sealed. Anyway, we travelled back to the hotel, and as soon as I got to my room, I called the porter and I said, just get rid of that guy. and that was my first experience of the tourist industry in Egypt, and from that I learned so much for the future trips which were to come. And there's always a story about Egypt and the local people that you encounter. With my 30 years experience of travelling to Egypt, obviously I've taken loads and loads of groups of enthusiastic students to visit the sites. Up in Cairo, probably one of the most important tombs is the Tomb of Tea in Kagemni. I supported Ivan Harprou's Oxford expedition to record those tombs, and I'm very familiar with them. I also supported Nigel Strudwick's mission of the West Bank tombs when he was excavating over there and recording those tomb reliefs. Now the question is, how do you explain the people of Egypt to a 21st century audience? Because all of the tombs are for the elites, the 1%, but 99% of the ancient Egyptians were the everyday people. So I think the way of approaching this is to explain that 70% of the population were engaged with farming and agriculture, and by doing this, people will appreciate the majority of the people who are engaged with work to do with their hands. The evidence is in the tombs on the West Bank, so we can totally ignore the elites for a change and focus on the people who are in those tombs, the everyday agricultural scenes. The two most important festivals that happened in Waset, which is modern day Luxor, of course, is the Feast of the Valley, which was created by Amun of Karnak when he left his sacred sanctuary at the beginning of July, crossed the River Nile to visit the ancestors on the West Bank. So what was it like for Egyptian people during that month when this feast was on? The temples were supplying all the free beer and the bread, and one of the customs was for the children to get drunk along with the adults, because if you're drunk you're closer with the gods. Then following that festival, when the Nile is starting to get lower, is the Feast of Opet, the seeding of the land by the great god Amun-Ra, by the 18th dynasty. So what was going on in Waset? You had the king there, you had his court there, you had the people there, the close relationship between the two, having the living god Horus in their sacred city of Waset. That must have been absolutely amazing. So that's how I see that you can sort of approach that topic and make it really interesting for the public. One of the reasons why I love archaeology so much is because it's never been presented to the public in, not so much presented to the public, but explained to the public in basic format. So media programs tend to dress it up with the lost civilization, we rediscovered, and really what people want to know is who they are today. And today they're living with their ancient past. The past is who we are. So how do you explain that? Well, from Egypt came the ideas of an afterlife. They created a writing system which the Phoenicians borrowed 22 characters and created the first alphabet. The Greeks borrowed that alphabet and called it Greek. The Etruscans in Italy borrowed it and called it Latin. When the Romans conquered the Etruscans, they took that alphabet and spread it all around Europe. So the alphabet that we're using originally comes from ancient Egypt. The architecture, which was created by the ancient Egyptians, was borrowed by the Greeks, it was borrowed by the Romans, and then when we had our imperialist time during the 20th century, we borrowed that architecture for our public buildings. So we are actually living with ancient Egypt in the modern world. It's just that most people don't understand that. And that's what I love. I love secrets. When I go down a road, I don't see the 21st century. I see a road which was invented by the Romans. I see the sewers which were invented by the Romans. I look at our housing, the bricks were invented by the Romans, the concrete was invented by the Romans, the roof tiles were invented by the Romans. The bathhouses that we call swimming pools were invented by the Romans. The theatres, the stadiums. this is the past. The past is with us now. That's who we are. And that's why I love archaeology so much.